encourage you guys to go back and engage with that conversation from a couple days ago as well. We really look forward to hearing from the community again today. And I just want to remind folks that while this is a likely location, a lease still needs to be signed. We're still in the very early stages of this project, which is why we're gathering all of your input today. And while this is the second community conversation, this is really just the beginning of continued engagement to follow. So let me just breeze through this really quick so we can get back to questions. We have a pretty straightforward agenda today. We're going to go through some site details, and then we'll open it up for Q&A with attendees. Just so that everybody's aware, this meeting is being recorded. We will also upload this video to the website for future reference. And we will, let's see here. We'll go ahead and go through this agenda. Pass it to this next page. After this really brief presentation, you guys can engage with us in two different ways. So you can either raise your hand and we will call on you. And when we call on you, we will unmute you and you can ask your question. You can also use the Q&A button, which is at the bottom of the screen. You can type in your question that way. It comes to us and we will do our best to answer those. We had a lot of great questions last week that we put together, and we will be combining the questions from last week or on Tuesday and from today, and we will also post those on our website. So we're going to do our best to get everybody's questions answered from Tuesday and today. I also want to note that I see some media folks here. I want this meeting to really be geared towards the community in East Portland. So we're not going to be taking media questions today, but you guys can always reach out to me in our media inbox. I just want to go over really quickly the rules of conduct. So if you're asking a question today or providing comments, we ask that you state your name and let us know if you're representing an organization. We're asking folks to limit your comments and questions to one so that everyone can participate. We will not tolerate disruptive conduct, such as shouting or refusing to conclude or using abrasive language. If these disruptions happen, they could result in you being muted or removed from the meeting. We don't want to do that, but that is something that we have in place. I just want to make sure everybody feels welcome and comfortable and respected and safe during this conversation. Today's panelists, we have Mayor Ted Wheeler, Skylar Brocker-Knapp, who is the Senior Policy Advisor for Mayor Wheeler. We have Kirkpatrick Tyler, KP from Urban Alchemy. And we have Director Mike Myers from the Community Safety Division. He's also the Incident Commander of the Street Services Coordination Center. We also have other staff from the city here that may be able to help answer questions regarding public safety or different things like that. We have a great website that has a lot of information. If you haven't been to this, portland.gov/wheeler/shelter-sites. We have a plethora of information. We have a Q&A. We have all kinds of different data for you to engage with. If you have follow-up questions or just want to reach out to us at any time about anything, you can email us at mayorwheeler@portlandoregon.gov. Really briefly, I'll just go over some basics. So the temporary alternative shelter sites is a project for Mayor Ted Wheeler. This came out of a multi-resolution plan that we brought to council with Commissioner Dan Ryan. For these sites, we're looking to have up to 6 sites planned across the city, all in different locations, neighborhoods. Initially, each site will have up to 100 tents for up to 100 adults. So there'll be no children at these sites. Shelter placement will be through a referral-based system, so there won't be walk-ins or anything like that. And we have a 3-year lifetime for this project. So if we want to go further, that would require additional council engagement. Some elements, folks that will be staying at this site would be provided with meals and snacks, electricity, restrooms, showers, toilet facility, laundry access, community space. They'll have a pet area, storage. We're making sure that these sites are located near transit, so they have ease of transportation. They'll be provided Wi-Fi. They'll have a perimeter fencing, and there will be regular trash collection and hazardous waste removal. The city performed a comprehensive search and competitive bidding process to select the nonprofit Urban Alchemy as the service provider for this site. Urban Alchemy already runs numerous sites in California and a congregate homeless shelter in Texas. They really have extensive experience in this field, and we're very lucky to have them join us on this project. We also have KP here to answer questions if they're related to the service provider. They'll manage the site 24/7 with approximately 1 staff member for every 15 clients. And the service provider, along with our office, will continue to engage with surrounding residents, clients, businesses, neighborhood associations, ESDs, throughout the development process and then as the sites are operating. It's just a few site policies that will be in place. There will be no strict time limit regarding the length of stay. Weapons must be checked at the entrance. So we have a zero tolerance policy on that. Alcohol and drugs cannot be consumed in common areas or public spaces. There will be no cooking or fires allowed and no guests. We'll have a 24/7 hour hotline staffed by the service provider for complaints or questions about the site or perimeter issues. Urban Alchemy will engage a 1,000-foot perimeter 16 hours a day, every single day. And there'll be a 1,000-foot no camping perimeter around the site. As far as next steps on this project, we're going to continue engaging with members of this neighborhood and community. A lot of folks, that we've engaged with over the past few weeks have raised a lot of concerns with schools. So that's going to be our focus for the next few days, is working to engage with those folks. We are going to be working to develop a good neighbor agreement. Everyone that registered for this event, I will send a follow-up email in the coming days, probably Monday of next week, that you can sign up for a newsletter, and that newsletter will provide updated information, next steps, and things like that. If you don't want to sign up for the newsletter, you can always just keep track on our website. We have the shelter sites tab, and we will make sure that that is kept up to date. And as we're engaging with folks, we're learning more about what the community is interested in us doing. So we're looking at defining different metrics and data points that we want to track together. We want to continue to hear areas of concern. You guys have shared some really insightful feedback that has been really helpful for our process. So I just really appreciate all of that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Wheeler just to share a few words. Then we'll pass it over to KP from Urban Alchemy.
Very good. Thank you. And can you hear me okay, Cody?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. I always want to make sure. So at any rate, thanks everybody for joining us again for this second larger conversation. We had one smaller one with some directors of the Neighborhood Association. Homelessness obviously is the #1 issue that Portlanders are concerned about, and that is by far. There's no issue I hear more about on a day-to-day basis. I hear about it each and every day. I hear about it in every corner of our city. And what I hear loudly and clearly from the people of this city is they are deeply concerned about unsanctioned homeless camps throughout the city of Portland. They're concerned about the intersections with public safety, the intersections with public health, the intersections with the environment and livability. And they expect us to do something to fix the problem. We have about 800 unsanctioned camps spread out across all 146 miles in the city of Portland. That makes it very difficult for us to monitor, for us to remediate it. And importantly, 95% of the people who live in those camps, according to an Oregonian survey, have never been approached by anybody for any kind of service whatsoever, not for shelter, not for housing, not for substance use disorder treatment, not for behavioral health, nothing. And so the goal of these sites or these villages is to connect people who need services directly with those services. As a first step, it's a stable, safe, clean environment. It's hygienic, as Cody mentioned. There will be toilets, there'll be laundry facilities, there will be regular litter collection, and that's a big step in the right direction. But what this also does is it connects people with the services they need to get off and stay off the streets. And so in that sense, it meets both parts of what I'm hearing from the public. On one hand, return our public right-of-ways, our sidewalks, our parks to the people who collectively deserve to have access to those right-of-ways in a safe, clean environment. I've also heard loudly and clearly from Portlanders that they don't just want us to sweep people from one neighborhood to the next. They want us to actually create off-ramps into services that people desperately need or navigation to housing. And that's what these sites that we're talking about tonight are about. While I have said, and while I believe that there should be no unsanctioned camps anywhere in the city of Portland, and that's my goal, is to have no unsanctioned homeless camps anywhere in the city of Portland. A key component of that is to make sure that we have viable safe alternatives that connect people to services to get them off the streets. And we have to do it at scale. And that's why these sites or these villages are larger in scale than what we've typically been doing previously. I want to be very clear, the urban alchemy people have nothing to do with the livability piece, the removal of problematic camps, the executive directives I've signed for safe routes to school or high traffic corridors, or the resets that we've done in other parts of the city. That's on me, that's on my administration, that's on my staff. What urban alchemy is here to talk about is the villages or the sites that we are creating that will enable us to get people connected to the services that they need to get off and stay off the street. So without further ado, that's sort of the broad context from my perspective. I look forward to your questions tonight, as do the rest of our panelists. Thank you for taking your valuable time to be with us tonight.
Thanks, Mayor. Let's pass it over to Kirkpatrick Tyler from Urban Alchemy.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Glad to have this opportunity to talk to you. We at Urban Alchemy are so excited about being able to be of service here in Portland. The safe sleep, or what we call safe sleep or sanctioned encampments, are an intervention that we are extremely grateful for, primarily because it is one that has been pointed out to us by unhoused residents as a low barrier option that they would be willing to take. We're excited about all of the folks pulling together, all of the innovation, all of the thoughtfulness that's gone into where the site will be, what it would look like. We look forward to having further and deeper engagement with residents to really work with us to build out what this environment and community looks like, and what type of space it will become that draws our unhoused neighbors in. We've had some in-depth conversation with a number of service providers, stakeholders, community organizations, as well as municipal leaders. And so we're just looking forward to putting all of that conversation to use in the day-to-day work. Urban Alchemy operates in a number of different cities, operating a number of different types of interim housing interventions, safe sleep being one of them, and safe sleep being one that we have seen draw folks in, create safe and healing spaces and opportunities for the residents that live there, provide a good neighbor for the residents that are housed and have businesses around it, both in Venice and in Hollywood. They are a direct connection to the decreased numbers in unhoused residents. Both of those communities having safe sleeps and tiny home villages. And so we're just excited to be good neighbors, to join in the work to end homelessness here in Portland, and to provide 5-star service for the residents that stay inside of the site. So thanks for having us.
Thanks, KP. So I'm going to go ahead and bounce back and forth between answering questions from the Q&A and from folks that have their hand raised. We'll start with the Q&A. The first question is a multi-part question from Bianca Riggs. This is something that we touched on last week, but didn't really get a chance to fully explore. Her question is, what examples of this model succeeding do we have? What metrics of success do we have set? What are we looking to put in place? Do we have evidence that this model actually works? So I'm going to pass that over to KP maybe to start with, just to share some of the metrics that you guys use within these camps.
Cody, could you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, so they're wondering what kind of metrics of success do we set? So how do we know that this model is actually going to work, and how do we sort of keep track and evaluate our progress?
Yeah, so the first metric that we look at are the number of beds filled, right? Are we maximizing our occupancy? That's one of the biggest indicators, because it lets us know if the facility that we've created is palatable, acceptable, and well received by the residents we want to live there. The second is the number of people who are receiving the connectivity to the supports and resources to become housing ready. right? So that looks like how many folks have gotten their documents like birth certificates, social security cards, IDs. Next are connection to services and service sustainability. So are we getting residents connected to new opportunities, but also have we created a stabilized environment where their existing case managers, the existing services and programs that they're already participating in, know that now they have a stable and steady place where they can be contacted and reached out to. And then finally, which isn't necessarily completely on us, but is about the work of the city to provide permanent housing, is how many folks do we get placed into permanent housing? I phrase that way because what we know is that we can get folks ready, but if the housing isn't there, then there's nowhere for them to go and to be ready for. And so oftentimes when we set up programs, when we set up sites like this, when we set up interim housing interventions, people like to focus on the number of folks that move from these sites into permanent housing. Oftentimes we forget to address what the availability of permanent housing is. And so what we've seen is that Urban Alchemy is successful in getting folks to transition from interim sites into permanent housing when it's available. But we can't prepare people to move somewhere that doesn't exist. And so we've had those conversations with the mayor's office. Mayor Wheeler has communicated just the aggressiveness in which you all are working to build housing. And so those are the ways that we mark success. And then I would say also the impact and safety and the perception of safety even in the neighborhood, right? So what does the curb culture look like? Are we able to be a partner in maintaining the safety and cleanliness of the neighborhood? I know that that's usually one of the major concerns when we talk about siting shelters inside, particularly in residential neighborhoods or near schools. What's going to be the impact on our day-to-day livability? And what we've seen consistently in the sites that we have, it's been pointed to by various business improvement districts, been pointed to by various elected officials, that when we operate a site, that the surrounding area, not just 1,000 feet, but even that immediate space where the shelter is sited becomes safer. We are able to move out any illicit or unwanted activities. And we've done a really good job of inviting folks who do need services and support to come inside.
Thanks, KP. The next question is from Cheryl Crow. This is a good question about outreach. She says, have you thought about reaching out to the homeless where they currently are? Can you pour more time and money into the current Portland service provider effort? This is a good question that frames this effort. So Mayor, maybe you can take this one.
Yeah, great question. The answer is absolutely yes. We already fund significant numbers of outreach workers. In fact, we expanded the number of outreach workers in our last budget. Multnomah County also has hugely supported outreach workers. And we know in other communities, people who actually take the time, go out and meet with people where they are, build trust, connect people sometimes to services to which they're entitled, which they may not understand completely at that particular point, or connect people to service providers who have capacity or in the luckiest cases, people who are ready for housing, transition them directly into housing. That's a critical thing. And we learned that lesson years ago, that you can't expect people to come to your congregate shelter. We have to go to people where they are. And so we do have those outreach providers, and we'll continue to have those outreach providers. So then the question gets asked, well, then why do you need these sites established? And the answer is because we can't hire enough service providers to possibly reach all of the people who are spread out in, as I say, up to 800 camps spread out over 146 square miles. We have to be smarter about it. And we know from other cities' experiences that if they provide the services in an area where people are stabilized, they are more successful. And again, I have to state that this is a partnership model. The city of Portland, we're not involved in the delivery of human services at scale. We're not in the business of delivering substance use disorder, although we support it. Treatments, we're not in the business of providing behavioral health services, although we have the behavioral health unit, we have the Portland Street Response and other smaller efforts. But the county does. They have expertise, they have personnel, they have facilities. And so our goal is to partner with the county and have those wraparound services be available to the individuals at these sites. So we're meeting people where they are and connecting them directly to those services.
Thank you, Mayor. The next question is from John Karavic. And again, I'm trying to read questions that we have not addressed yet. John says, in the meeting with the Brooklyn Action Corps that we held last week, the mayor confirmed that we are looking into a $250,000 neighborhood safety funding, which would be per neighborhood. If we can expand on that a little bit, I think I'll have Sky share a little bit. The other question is, would that be $250K per year for each neighborhood group? So Hand and Brooklyn, or how would that work? Sky can elaborate.
Yeah, thanks, John, and thanks, Cody. Thank you for that question, because I think there, is probably a misunderstanding on what that means, like as per neighborhood. So the $250,000 is going to be every year. So council put it in the budget for this year. We've got 1 year of funding through this package. The intention is to have that funding each year for the 3 years of the lease. But that is per like the neighborhood or business district that makes sense around that specific site. Every site's different. They're all going to have geographic differences. So because of this location, it straddles kind of both of those neighborhoods. So that would be a conversation with the Brooklyn Neighborhood Association and the Hand Neighborhood Association to determine kind of how that is best spent. And what safety looks like to those groups and the surrounding neighborhood. So I think those two groups probably make the most sense. So thank you for that clarification point. So it's $250,000 per site, basically. So there's 3 different sites, there's $750,000 total. So 250, just to be crystal clear, 250 for the site, and then that goes to whatever makes sense for that specific site. So if the site's in the middle of a business district and not really a neighborhood association or neighborhood, it would probably go to that business district. This specific site at Gideon kind of straddles those 2 neighborhoods. So I think that probably makes the most sense, but that would be a further discussion. That's not really for us to determine so much as a discussion with the surrounding community and what they want to kind of use it for, what makes them feel safe, what security means to them. And how to best spend those funds.
Thanks, Sky. While I have you, I'm going to answer one more question from the Q&A. This is from Eric Murfitt. They asked, what services has the county committed to provide? Sky, can you take that one?
Yeah, so I would say we have nothing in writing. So I think we're having amazing discussions. We talk to the county every single day. But we know that they are very interested and supportive and positive discussions. But we are still determining, and we're meeting actually on Monday and all next week. We're basing we have an ask list. We have what we think those sites need. And I think it's actually been published in the paper before from a public records request, but it's a pretty list that's very similar to what the mayor talked about. So behavioral health, mental health, physical health kind of services, animal services. But what we need to determine is how we braid different services together. So like the mayor mentioned, we have a behavioral health unit. It's small, but it's a really incredible team that does incredible work. They don't need to duplicate efforts. They could assist a county team and they could come on different days or assist in different ways. So we're trying to determine what makes the most sense, the most efficient use of resources. I think we all are aware of staffing shortages for behavioral mental health workers. So we're trying to actually create a more efficient system for folks who are already engaged in this work and then braid those different services together. So I would say nothing is completely certain, but we are having really positive conversations and just determining what makes the most sense based on services the city has, based on services the county has, and based on nonprofit providers who are just also very eager to participate. And we've been really encouraged by folks that really want to support this effort. So it'll be a mix of all 3.
Thanks, Sky. Let's move over to some hand-raised questions. I'm going to call on Alex Garodischer. Apologies for the pronunciation. Should be able to unmute yourself. Alex, then next on the docket, we'll have again, name pronunciation, Saskia Dressler. So you'll be up next. Alex, can you hear us?
Can you hear me, Cody?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Mayor Wheeler, I hate to actually spend my one question on a question of process instead of a question of substance, but I guess the process so far has really given folks, including my family, a lot of concern, and it hasn't been the smoothest process. Like and that really kind of doesn't engender trust, and trust is really critical to this, right? Trust that the health and safety of the people who are the residents that are going to be inside the site is there, and the health and safety of the folks that are already in the neighborhood. And just as an example, we got some mailers a couple weeks ago, told us to go to the website. They posted the information for this meeting, a few days before. We were clicking every day to see what was going on. When the meeting did occur, it's this meeting. It's just my disembodied voice talking to you. It's not. It barely meets the minimum rung of what someone would call a conversation, right? It's called a community conversation. We're told that there will be more opportunity for input, in the future, and that this is at the very early stages. But so far, just the way that it's been rolled out, it sounds very disingenuous. It sounds like parents bracing their kids for like there's bad news that's going to come. It feels like a steamroller. So I guess my question is, how do we, because the trust of the neighborhood, and the community is going to be so important in making this a success. How do we recapture that trust when we started off? A lot of people, it's not just me, on the wrong foot with this concept, and how do we trust this is going to be a better solution for homelessness than this forum is an embodiment of a conversation?
Yeah, Alex, it's actually a great question, and I appreciate you asking it because we get asked about process a lot, and I've found that there's usually two flavors of criticism about process. Either it's too slow and we don't have a sense of urgency, or it's too quick and we're steamrolling the community. And so I'll just tell you where the needle we're threading here and how we did it. So starting maybe 3 years ago, I started talking about the importance as your mayor of addressing the problem of homelessness, not just in the way that we were doing it, but actually making a difference for the lives of the thousands of people who are living in what I personally believe are dangerous and squalid conditions. I indicated that we needed to act at scale, and we started vetting ideas internally in our office that were fairly well publicized in the press, even before we had our ducks in a row in terms of what model we wanted, or what we were going to base it on, or what kind of services were going to be provided. And then I did make a very public announcement about these particular camps and what we were looking for, what criteria we would be using. And I made it very clear that we were going to be looking for up to 6 locations that could serve as many as 100 tents or pods, up to 150 people. And there was a great deal of discussion in the media, in the community, between myself and neighborhood associations, between myself and business district associations and others. And now we're at the phase where we're ready to implement. And so we did a public request for proposals for a service provider that was also extensively covered in the media. We selected our service provider. We said we were going to be identifying sites. And here we are, having vetted dozens of sites. And a lot of the sites that we looked at didn't pan out for one reason or another. And we typically do not publicly disclose sites that we're in the early discussions to even see whether they're viable. There's no point getting everybody riled up and concerned and activated before we even know if a site is viable. Some of the sites that we've been discussing, including this one, aren't public. They're not owned by government. They're owned by private sector entities. And in a lot of cases, if we're having a real estate discussion with a private sector entity, they ask us to sign what's called an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. And so until we have some sort of at least a basic agreement, we're not even allowed to go public with the information. As was mentioned by Cody up front, we don't even have a lease signed yet on this space, but we immediately, as soon as we had what we thought was a tentative understanding with the owners of this property, we sent out our flyers, We were very clear about where this would be located, what kind of services would be available, and we committed to doing these meetings. And I do them virtually. I do them with big groups. I do them with small groups. On Saturday, I actually met with a group of people in a different part of the city in person to discuss, this model writ large citywide. So I feel like we're making the effort, and I am sorry if it did not come across as the best process. I'm always looking for ways to improve the process. Frankly, this outreach model was based on some of the learning that we gathered from the earlier efforts that Commissioner Ryan did around the safe rest villages. But if there's ways that we can improve this, we're certainly, I'm interested in doing it. I'm not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. I'm trying to be completely transparent about what it is I'm trying to do and how I'm trying to do it, how I'm trying to get there, and who I'm trying to do it with. And now we're at the phase where we're actually talking about where. And so this is part of that process. As Cody said, we didn't come in saying we're going to do a neighborhood agreement, but people in the first call said we want one, so we're going to do it. People asked us about our metrics. They offered additional metrics. So we said, we'll include those. People wanted more security around the safe routes to school, something I support because I actually passed an executive directive making it illegal to camp anywhere on a safe route to school and saying that we would remove encampments in those areas. So I'm super committed to that. And if there's other things people want in a good neighbor agreement, or if there are other concerns around security or safety, we're really interested in working with you and with the neighborhood to get it right.
Thanks, Mayor.
By the way, Cody, I also just, and I had permission to say this, State Representative Rob Nose is also on this call. He's listening, he's taking notes. My experience with him is he's always been very, very engaged in constituent services and community affairs. So Rob, even though I can't see you, I know you're out there and I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thanks, Mayor. All right, let's hear from Saskia Dressler, and then we'll have Philippe on deck to speak next. So Saskia, perfect.
Yeah, hi, thank you very much. Thanks, Mayor Wheeler and Skylar and KP and Cody and Mike and our interpreter, Heather. I live in the Hosford Abernathy neighborhood near New Seasons and Peoples, and I've lived here since 2001, so a lot of changes in the neighborhood, and been, along with so many Portlanders, despairing the conditions that so many people are living in and the change in kind of the energy and vitality of our city over the last few years. So I really, on a daily basis, like probably all of us on the call, are just feel the anguish of seeing these changes in our city and feeling the anguish from my privileged position of a person with a house, with a job, with a car, for people who don't have that, who don't even have the beginning of that, who are living on our streets. I'm really proud that this is happening near my home, and I want to support this as much as I can. We are never going to address this problem that we call a problem, but that is people's lives. We're never going to help people if we don't create venues where they can be safe and have dignity in order to approach and accept the services that can help them determine their best and most positive path forward. This may not be perfect, but what I've seen from Urban Alchemy, I'm incredibly impressed, with everything you shared on Tuesday and what you've shared so far tonight, KP. I really think that we have a lot to be very proud of so far in this process. My question specifically is about the planning that can be done first of like a census and of who's already in this 1,000-foot area living on the streets without a home. What is their position? Would they have any priority in becoming residents of the community? Because they will be losing their place to live. I mean, in my neighborhood, I see the tents, I see the trailers, I see people in this situation. And I want to that's my really primary question. And then also just to say to neighbors out there, like, this isn't easy. This is change. We're trying to do something that's like we've never experienced before, but we're neighbors. These are our neighbors. And over the years I've lived in this neighborhood, I've made incredible friendships, relationships, family connectiveness to a degree with folks who are in unhoused situations. And it really took faith that there are people who want to live their best life just like I do, and trusting and working together. So I just want to offer that to neighbors who may be skeptical. I think this is going to be an improvement in our neighborhood. The commitments to like cleanliness, foot patrols, good neighbor agreements. I really have a lot of faith. And but I do have that question about those people who are living in our neighborhood now and what the plans are to support their well-being going forward.
Thank you so much, Saskia. Sorry, I'm going to jump in. We really appreciate that. And I think that's an excellent question. And I think one that is brought up kind of with a lot of shelter sites in different villages. So I know KP has a lot more information. I will let him speak. I just want to say we have that determination kind of has not been made yet. And so that is one piece that I would love, that engagement with the community. Exactly, this kind of piece is really good to know that that's something that people are very interested in. I think that's something that we knew people might be interested in. And so we do engagement in your community already, but the outreach team, knows some folks by name. They go back and forth and engage with folks on a daily basis. We kind of go around the whole city, but obviously knowing that this shelter will be sited here, knowing kind of who's in the immediate vicinity, who's in the neighborhood, whether they'd be interested in a site like this, kind of talking through the pieces of what this site will offer, if they'd be interested in it. Obviously, this is not the only option, so also offering them those other services as well that we have along our continuum. And I know KP and Urban Alchemy, one thing I really like about their model is that before a site even opens, they will have staff who will be engaging in the immediate community. And just really, they're very committed to being good neighbors to all unhoused and housed folks in that space. So I'll let KP speak, but I think that's an excellent point and definitely something that we would love to hear from the community, what matters to you in our process.
Yeah, thanks a bunch, Sky and Saskia. Thanks so much for your words of support and thoughtfulness. Specifically to answer your question, leading up to the opening of any site, we always conduct our own census, and census seems like we do a lot of relationship building with the residents that are in the immediate area. One, to your point, because yeah, those are the folks that are going to be most heavily impacted, but more so because they really will be the voices and visionaries for what that site looks like from a resident perspective. And so our leadership and Jeff Dickey, our teams will be down, and the practitioners that we bring on staff will spend this time between now and when the doors open doing that engagement, doing some trust building and relationship building, so that when the doors open, that the folks who are directly impacted and already reside in that area will be able to have the opportunity to move in. And I think some of the questions around prioritization kind of lay in the hands of the mayor's office.
Yeah, so this is an issue, thanks, KP. This is an issue that came up on the meeting on Tuesday, and I'm very open to this. I have no opposition to this. I think it's a great idea. I like the idea of doing the outreach to people in the immediate neighborhood. People on the streets are there for a variety of different circumstances, but there are often people on the streets who are trying to live close to employment or people that they know, or even family members in some cases. And if this is a site that they would feel comfortable coming to, that would be great. And I would support that if that's what the community wants. I also just want to reiterate that the comments reminded me to say this, that what we're doing here and how we're structuring it was very much informed by the population of people currently living outside, unsheltered in our community. And what we learned from them was, even though we do have congregate shelters, 8 out of 10 said they would not consider going to a congregate shelter for a variety of reasons. But the majority, 6 to 7 out of 10, said they would go to a site like this that is outdoors, that is more reflective of the environment they would be transitioning from. And there's a variety of reasons for that. But it's also a service gap. It's a gap in our delivery system to be able to create something like this at scale to actually address the problem that connects people to services to help them off ramp from homelessness. So we think this is a good idea. And if the community wants us to plug in more people locally, I'm happy to see that happen. It would be helpful for us, since you're the ones who know where people are in the community who need help. If you could help us identify where those individuals are, give us as much information as you feel comfortable giving us, we will specifically make an effort to reach out to those individuals.
Thank you,
And
Mayor.
it wouldn't be us, it would be professional outreach workers.
Yeah, you can connect those folks with our team directly. Yeah.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm seeing some folks in the chat too that are concerned about timing. I think we're willing to stay a little bit past our deadline. The mayor does not have a budget session this evening like we did on Tuesday. So we're just going to keep chugging along. Philippe, you're next. You should have permissions to unmute, and we'll have Ali Jaini afterwards.
Can you hear me? All right. Well, I want to express my gratitude for Mayor Wheeler and all those involved to really attempt to outreach and communicate with the neighborhoods. Nevertheless, I would point out that when a couple of weeks ago there was this first press conference announcing this choice of initial site, neither Brooklyn nor the other Han neighborhood had representatives involved in the press conference. Instead, it was an organization representing the inner southeast industrial zone. And there was something a little disingenuous about that, because it gave the impression that, oh yes, we had this great partnership between a neighborhood and the city with regard to a site, which in fact is not at all in that neighborhood. But be that as it may, I wanted to pick up on where Kirkpatrick Tyler had left off a little earlier. And the professed purpose of the sites is really to provide, as I understand it, a transition to permanent housing, and also to adequate support, be it for drug and alcohol, substance abuse, and so on. But it's a transition. And so my question is, will the city, once these sites and this particular site open, will it have available housing units that people, and the people who have been vetted and have been entered in these sanctioned site, for these people to move on to? I mean, or do these things become more or less permanent settlements?
Yeah, so Philippe, let me take a swing at that, and let's be completely honest and transparent here. Our metro area is short thousands of units of affordable housing. That's well documented. It's been pervasive, and this arrangement is actually responsive to part of one of 5 resolutions that were passed by the Portland City Council unanimously in support of a broader approach to addressing homelessness in our community. The first resolution spoke specifically to affordable housing. And what we were looking for there was flexibility from our state legislature to use tax increment financing to jumpstart investment in affordable housing and the purchase of affordable housing. We were also looking to the legislature for tax credits and other incentives that would make more of it pencil out. Importantly, we began the process of undertaking to identify up to 400 shovel-ready sites in the city of Portland. And why this is fortuitous is it perfectly dovetails not only with the Metro Regional Housing Bond, but the governor has just introduced to the legislature a massive housing program that could be used alongside these sites with these new funding mechanisms in place. So I cannot state unequivocally that there will be housing for every single person that comes through these sites. But I can tell you, as you know, we have to get on it today. And I sort of think of it as a 1-2. Yes, we need the housing. Yes, we need to create it. You're 100% correct that we're short. But there are also people still living in dangerous and squalid conditions who are dying by the dozens on our streets. And we need an answer for them too. There's a sense of urgency I have to get people out of those dangerous sites for their own well-being. And again, we're not forcing people into these sites, but we're making them available. And we believe, based on the outreach we've done, they will be very attractive to people based on what KP said about their occupancy rates, which are near 100% for their other sites around the nation. I'm very hopeful that this is the right combination. And then with regard to the press conference, I did meet with the board of Hosford Abernathy, the hand board. They shared the same concern that you just expressed, and I take that criticism to heart. The individual that we invited from the East Side Industrial Area wasn't supposed to be speaking for your neighborhood. That wasn't why he was there. He was there to talk about similar strategies that we've implemented in other parts of the city that had been successful. But you know, I see how that could have been interpreted as not being completely reflective of the interests of your community, and that is a lesson learned. And I take full responsibility for that. And I see KP has a comment.
Yeah, hey, Philippe. I wanted to take just a second to talk about kind of that time window, and the mayor alluded to it, but I want to hopefully talk to something deeper, right? That's inside the rationale of folks' concern. When we think of encampments, a lot of times what becomes pervasive in our minds is kind of the squalor, the danger, the challenges that come along with an encampment. While that impacts us who are housed, it has a far more profound impact on our unhoused neighbors. And I say that to say that there's a lot of people that use encampments as cover for other illicit activity. When we introduce sites like this into our communities, what happens is we create a barrier between our most vulnerable neighbors and the predatory element that usually takes advantage of them because they go unchecked after 5 o'clock Monday through Friday, and kind of all around the clock on the weekends, because that's how our service system is set up. And so when we provide sites like this, whether it's for a year or whatever the timeline is to create affordable housing units, in this time, there are folks who are not being raped, not being brutalized, not being used for illegal dumping. Oftentimes, the squalor that we see around unhoused residents in encampments are because people think that that's a place where they can dump and get away with it. We're not seeing drug dealers have unfettered access to folks who are clearly struggling in addiction. We're not seeing loan sharks take advantage of folks who have mental health challenges, and maybe they get a benefits card every single month, and so they show up and brutalize them. We're not seeing people renting tents out to folks monthly and then burning them down if they refuse to pay. And so when we introduce safe sleep sites and interim housing sites into our community, not only are we providing a buffer and a combatant against that undesired behavior, but we're also creating safe space for the folks who are usually being victimized in that environment. And so our hope and our goal is, and what we've done successfully, is to do that in a way that adds to the neighborhood, not takes away from it.
Thank you, KP. Thank you, Philippe. Let's go to Ali Jaidi, and then we'll have Barbara Strauss. You'll be up next.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, my name is Allie. I have a question related to the use of criminal citations, the $100 fine or the 30 days in jail as a deterrent or a kind of incentive to get people into these camps. And I've talked to a lot of homeless people who are very concerned about being coerced into the sites. So my question for Mayor Wheeler, should a service that actually benefits the community really use criminal punishment as the alternative to people utilizing that service? And then if the service is helpful, won't people want to go there without criminal punishment? If so, why expand the city's capacity to criminalize homelessness? Why not offer the camp as a service without the coercion?
Yeah, and I'll let KP answer too, but I'll start. So look, this is not intended as a criminalization effort. This is not intended to be a law enforcement based model at all. The focus on this is to get people into situations that are better, that are not dangerous, that aren't located in the middle of an intersection or on a safe route to school or in a place where people are subjected to the kind of brutalization that KP mentioned earlier. They're voluntary. And the process will not be to have police officers go out and patrol the perimeter or do those kinds of things. There will actually be outreach workers going out, talking to people and encouraging them to participate in this model. And one of the reasons I liked Urban Alchemy is they've done this before and they're really good at it. So I'll turn it over to KP to talk a little bit about what that engagement looks like.
Yeah, hey, Ali, really appreciate that. So I think I would start with, you're right. If a site is there to be a service and a support, folks should want to go there. And that's actually been the success of our model. We actually have been able to, in Austin, Texas, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, we've been able to get folks to come in and utilize and actually ask by name for our sites because of the type of environment and community that we work with them to create. And so one of the things that has often been distinguished between our sites and others is that we do a really good job of inviting people to come inside so that they don't feel the need to encamp on kind of around the perimeter. Usually that's a sign that there's something inside that folks don't want to go and take part in, but there's also all these other services that are easily accessible there. And so to stay close to the services, I'll camp outside, but because I don't necessarily desire to be inside, I'll just kind of find my way out here. At Urban Alchemy sites nationwide, what you'll see is that if folks end up at our gates, that they 10 times out of 10 have made a decision on their own to come inside because we have something to offer. Our outreach teams, our care coordinators, our day-to-day staff have been able to make tremendous impact in getting folks to come inside without the use of sanitation, without the use of law enforcement. And that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on.
Thanks,
Yeah,
KP.
do you mind if I do a really brief follow-up?
Actually, really quick, Ali, I'm going to introduce Stephanie Howard. It's the mayor's director of community safety, and she can also speak a little bit to the incentives program. So this might answer your question before your follow-up.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry. And Allie, thanks for your question. I do just want to clarify a couple of things. Number one, there's no additional laws being put on the books related to this. There is an existing ordinance that is, the vehicle for a citation, if that would ever have to be used. The goal here is not to follow that track whatsoever. And in fact, we're working with different stakeholders at the county and the DA's office with behavioral health and the chair's office to design what this program actually looks like in practice as far as our incentives and how we are making these sites accessible and helpful to remove barriers for folks that are experiencing homelessness. For example, one of the things that we're looking at is how we can write in to the existing law waivers of fines and costs associated with, past citations. We're looking at how we can facilitate, bringing in better access to programs like warrant clearing and record expungement for people who are eligible for that, which are oftentimes barriers to both employment and housing for people. So a lot of what we are looking at and working on as we develop this with folks is trying to figure out every possible way that we can create meaningful incentives for people to participate in services of any kind that can help give them some sustainable and lasting autonomy and agency in their lives. That's really important to us.
Thank you, Stephanie. Allie, did that answer your follow-up?
Not quite. So I wanted to refer specifically to a fact stated in some recent reporting by Alex Zielinski about this peer outreach team and social worker team that will be kind of created or is already there maybe, but will be used to help move people toward the camps. We'll also be able to recommend that people are issued criminal citations, and they'll be able to make that recommendation to the city. I'm curious what exactly that process will look like. Like, what is that recommendation? How does that turn into a citation? And then one last question is, will there be any increase in the funding for sweeps along with all of this?
I can take the first question. And again, we have a proposal out there that we're getting feedback on. And so none of this is underway in terms of process. We're open to feedback on that process and developing that. What we are envisioning in our proposal is, having outreach workers who are just, connecting with people where they are and trying to get referrals made for shelter, whether that's this or another kind of shelter. But beyond that, if there are folks that continue to be resistant to services, we want to find ways to make meaningful offers to them. And so what we're proposing is creating, a board that includes peer representation, that includes service providers, to make those more directed and more specific kinds of tailored outreach to folks who have continued to decline referrals. The issuance of a citation is something that we hope would never have to happen, but what our proposal, again, it's a draft, what our proposal states is that if there was outreach that was tailored to a person's circumstances and that was still proving unsuccessful, that group may issue or may make a referral for a citation. It is not commanding that they do so.
If I could jump in here, Stephanie, I mean, this is obviously a pretty thorny issue. And as I stated up front, I hope very transparently, my objective is that ultimately there be no unsanctioned homeless camping anywhere of the city of Portland. I don't think it's humane. I think it creates a lasting impact for those who are relegated to the streets, and it clearly has safety and livability and public health issues for the broader community. But the right answer here isn't just to go out and sweep people from one neighborhood to the next. Ultimately, the goal here is to have an off-ramp at scale so that people have a better viable alternative that they could go to where they're actually connected to some semblance of stability and hygiene and services. And so that's the focus of this model. And based on the outreach we've already done, we had 600 different contacts with people currently in those encampments. And for them, what they said is, this is a go. This is the way to, ultimately, if we can get this to scale, to stop the process of just moving people from one neighborhood to the other, or one green space to the next, or one park to the next, but actually start off-ramping people from the streets. And that's, from my perspective, what we need to do. Now, in the process we've currently engaged in, and I've signed several executive directives on high volume sidewalk areas downtown, on safe routes to schools, on high crash corridors. We haven't had to issue citations, or at least if we had, I could probably count them on one hand. People typically voluntarily move. But for the vast majority of those individuals, we haven't really, we've recovered the green spaces, and that's good, I guess. But if we want to end homelessness, then we have to talk about something completely different. And I believe what we're proposing here with these sites is that something that is currently a gap in our delivery. And again, as Sky said up front, this isn't in lieu of everything else. We're still doing shelter, we're still doing prevention services through the joint office, we're still buying motels, we're still setting up alternative tiny home villages, we're still investing in affordable housing, first through the Portland bond, now the regional bond. But this is a really important gap in our delivery. And as I look at other cities, whether it's Minneapolis or Houston or Denver, they have filled these gaps and we have not. And I think it's a really important opportunity that we can't let pass.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's go to Barbara Strauss. Eric Murfitt will have you on deck to speak after Barbara. Barbara, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, I have a kind of very specific question for KT. Is it KT or KP?
It's Kirkpatrick.
Oh, okay. Oh, I get it now. KP. Thank you. I was wondering, so you gave a ratio of 1 to 15 for every client in the shelter. You'd have one employee there. Yeah, I'm in the neighborhood, by the way, within the perimeter. And so I'm curious about, A, would you hire people locally or would you bring in your staff? B, where would they live? C, if you have 1 per 15 for 16 hours a day, that's at least 20 employees, which is fine. Do you have a sense of how many would be on site and how many would be, for want of a better word, patrolling the area? Since you said that you would have people around that perimeter at any given time in those 16 hours and also have people on the shelter site.
Yeah, so the answer to your first question is yes. So when we begin operating in a new community, we do a mix of bringing folks who know how to do the work and understand the culture of the organization. And then we also hire from the community. Folks that come here, our operations director for Portland, Jeff, he actually bought a home here. Folks who would come from other markets that we serve in, they would do the same. They would rent an apartment or something like that. To your to the third question, we operate on a really fluid staff system. And that's to say there's nobody who is exempt from engagement. And so if you were to come on site, what you'd see is that throughout the day, practitioners are shifting responsibilities. So when there are times like lunch or meal service, then it's all hands on deck there, while some folks are managing kind of the entrance and exit of the site. When things are slow and folks are gone, folks are going to make a walk around the block. So I think the how is because we one of the strong tenets of our model is that we're always engaging. And that engagement can be taking place on the inside of the gate and the outside of the gate. What you'll see is that in the beginning weeks that we'll have a really heavy presence outside of the gates of the community. And that's about relationship building. What we've experienced is that as we build strong relationships and we kind of set a culture in the space around the site, is that there becomes less and less need for heavy overbearing monitoring. And then our teams just kind of monitor based on some regular set times, right? folks going back and forth to school and home, some critical moments that we've been able to observe. But outside of that, it really is based on the culture that we've developed around the site and in the community, and in response to the needs that our neighbors express.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, KP. Thanks, Barbara. We're gonna go to Eric Murfitt next, and then we'll end today with Lisa Marie Witter. So Eric, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Hi. I have an acquaintance who recently toured the site down in Los Angeles, and he noted that the weapons ban in the camp was monitored basically through the honor system. And I'm wondering, how are we going to keep keep weapons out of the campsite in my neighborhood? I'm a Brooklyn neighbor, and concerned about safety and violence. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a bunch, Eric. That's a really important question. And glad you got to talk to somebody who had seen a site firsthand. So we will use the same honor system that we use in every one of our sites, in which our incident ratio is virtually none. And I say that just because I don't have like the data sitting right in front of me, but in all of our sites, we practice a community and trust-based system of safety. Our staff, our teams, our practitioners are well-trained in de-escalation, motivational interviewing, situational awareness. So we've been able to keep peace in all of our sites. We are clear that when folks hold weapons, it's a reflection of their perception of their own safety, not that they want to do harm to anyone else. And so what we've seen is an overwhelming willingness for residents to turn in whatever weapons they keep for their safety while out in the world. In addition to that, when we do encounter a resident who maybe has held some weapon on their own, one, I think most important is that's not grounds for kicking someone out. What we do is revisit this conversation about safety, their safety and the safety of the community, revisit the agreements that we've made in the community. In terms of actual safety, one of the largest and easiest ways to be for your tenure at a Safe Sleep Village to be ended is to commit a violent act against someone else, whether it is a resident or a practitioner. And we are very clear about that. And because it is a space where people want to be, and it is a healing and safe environment, we've not seen any major incidents in any of our Safe Sleep sites.
Thanks, KP. Let's go to Lisa Marie. Should be able to unmute yourself now.
Okay, hi, can you hear me? Yes, okay. First of all, thank you all for being here. Thank you so much for doing all that you are to move this forward. I'm really excited about the group encampment plans going forward. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler, for pushing for this. Thank you, KP, for taking this on. This is, it's pretty exciting to see it starting to move forward. I wanted to ask, and I have a toddler on me, so if I get distracted, I apologize. I wanted to speak specifically and ask questions about the predatory elements that KP was talking about that tend to kind of converge on these locations where there are a lot of vulnerable people, because the homeless population is not a monolith, and I think it's kind of offensive to talk about them in that way. There are people that are dealing with any number of issues, from mental illness to drug addiction, but I think of drug addiction as the one where you really see a lot of the predatory element coming to try to exploit that. I have a family member who dealt with this, and basically they would go, this is Baltimore City, but they would go find a blue light. It's a blue light camera. It's meant to stop crime. And they would find that blue light and go a few blocks away, because that's where the drug dealing was. It wouldn't be right in that general area. It would be just outside of it, because those elements knew that there's a vulnerable population that would congregate around there. And that's their clientele. That's who they want to take advantage of. And so that's where they would show up. I believe in your ability to run a well-run camp that really serves people that need it, and to protect the immediate vicinity. I have concern about what will happen for the school that's 6 blocks north, for the school that is 6 blocks south. That half-mile to a mile radius around there is going to be, it's my concern that will be, it will draw in elements that are there to cause problems, commit crime, you name it. And I'm not talking about the homeless people, I'm talking about the people who want to take advantage of them. What are you doing beyond that 1,000-foot barrier to protect those communities? I'm in that community. So what are you doing to protect us? And how you talked some to the sanctioning of, yes, we don't want to criminalize homelessness, but if someone's committing crimes outside of that area, we should be able to be citing them, right? And holding them accountable. Are you going to have more patrols there? Is this going to take away from patrols we already need in other areas where there's high amounts of encampments already? Wouldn't it make sense to have an encampment where there's the greatest need, which would be an area where there's, a very large concentration of them already, and this would be a great improvement. So I'm wondering, what are you going to do to protect the area around it? And then outside of the 1,000 feet, and have you considered that maybe this isn't the best spot with the 2 schools right nearby? Thank you.
Yeah, let me start, and then I'm going to turn it back to Cody. But one point we made in Tuesday's session, we didn't really reiterate it for this one yet, is that 1,000-foot isn't rigid. If there are other areas in the community that people are concerned about, we definitely will work with you on that. The school did come up, both of them did on Tuesday, and we're very interested in engaging on that and engaging with the schools. Cody, I know you've been working with some of the staff. I'll turn it back to you and Stephanie to give some of those details.
Yeah, I'll just share that this is, very top of mind. We've heard from all of you via email and through the chat and through our different meetings. So this is our next step for us. It's spring break next week, but after that, we'd like to engage with school leadership and bring in not only this team, but our public safety teams and other partners to have an initial discussion. And then I think it would be right to then engage with parents and other folks that have these concerns. So that's an obvious next step for us. And we're really happy that folks have brought this up. Anything that anybody else wanted to add on this question?
Yeah, Cody, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna quickly thank you, Lisa Marie, for that. And I would also love to touch base with you offline, because I think you make some excellent points. And we're really focused on exactly what you're talking about. I'm very aware of the exact phenomenon that you're discussing. I saw KP nodding his head because he and I have had that conversation many a time. And I know Mike is, we've had this conversation as well. So we are well aware of that, and we are concerned about those issues. And that's why we not only have faith in Urban Alchemy and their work, and I've actually seen kind of the surrounding area, not just like an immediate vicinity kind of area of their sites and other places. But we also are not putting this completely on Urban Alchemy. There's a lot of city resources. We have outreach workers, we have partnerships. We have folks who are already doing a lot of this work, and this specific area will be a focus for a lot of those folks that I work with, that Mike works with every day. So we are all very aware of that and want to coordinate that better for those neighborhoods and that area. Schools are obviously top of mind as well. So we'll engage with, we already are usually, typically and regularly engaging with the school districts. I actually just personally went to Hosford and Cleveland, so I know the schools well, and I really want to make sure that these areas are very safe and secure. So. But I just want you to be aware that we are focused on those surrounding areas and not just that 1,000 foot. That 1,000 foot is just to assure folks that we will have folks, really regularly engaging in that immediate vicinity, but that doesn't mean that there's not going to be engagement in the larger community as well.
Thanks, Guy. I just want to make a quick note. I just want to thank everybody on the panel here. We stayed, about 20 minutes after the scheduled time, so I really appreciate everybody staying on the call. Again, this is just the beginning of the conversation. We are still in the very early stages of the site. This is the initial conversation that will jumpstart, future engagement. So anybody that's been on this this call or the one on Tuesday, it aggregates a list of your emails. So I will be sure to reach out with a way to stay in touch and keep updated with our initiatives. You can also, I know that there's been hundreds of questions sent to us in the Q&A function. We've had folks calling the office, sending emails, talking to us on the streets. We have so many great questions that offer a lot of insight and concerns that we want to answer. So We'll be working to answer those this week, and we'll post them on our website. We're developing and fleshing out a Q&A page. If you have any other questions or any other concerns, keep them coming. We have the email is mayorwheeler@portlandoregon.gov. It comes directly to our office. You can, in the headline, put temporary alternative shelter sites. Every question is a learning experience for us, and it helps provide really strong insight into your concerns and helps us, decide next steps of moving forward. So for everybody that has questions in the chat, we will work to answer those and post those online. And like I said, this is the first conversation, so there's much more engagement to come. Mayor Wheeler, would you like to say anything before we check out today?
Yeah, only this. Thanks. I appreciate everybody taking time. The fact that there's so many people here, over 100 today, almost 300 the other day. On Saturday in a different part of the city, we had probably 100 people are deeply concerned about this issue, and they want to see it resolved, and they want to see it resolved with urgency, with clarity, and with humanity. And I heard that loudly and clearly from everybody here tonight. Thanks for participating.
Thank you all. All right, with that, we'll close out. Thanks.